You have to be obsessed. And that's what I think the difference between the levels are. And I think top international players, I think that's what they have. I was asked once about the type of player I look for in a women's player. I said I don't look for women's players. I look for footballers who happen to be women. And they are the special ones. People talk about sacrifices all the time. They say, oh, I sacrificed this for football. You don't sacrifice this for football. It's a choice. You choose it. And he said, look, John, he said, you'll make a living out of football. Just remember, it might be as a coach. And if you're not enjoying it, they're not enjoying it.
Welcome to the Proline Coaching Podcast, where we talk about football coaching, player development, and everything in between. I'm Ash Bargosen, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carl Nolan. Carl, how's things?
Very well, thank you, Ash. Really excited to have today's guest on, somebody who I'm very fortunate to actually have shared a football pitch with back in our playing days, someone with over 20 years of coaching and managerial experience, has played the game professionally, holds the UEFA Pro license, and has coached across 4 different continents.
And before we introduce our guest today, this episode is powered by Comfort Temperature Solutions Limited, our official partner here at Proline Coaching Academy. CTS are specialists in the installation, service and maintenance of domestic, commercial and industrial air conditioning and refrigeration systems. From simple residential splits to large-scale VRF setups, they deliver exceptional service, expert engineering and top quality products that make them a standout in the HVAC industry. We're proud to partner with a company that shares our values of excellence, reliability and community impact. You can learn more at their website that is linked down in the description below. And of course, don't forget to follow Proline Coaching Academy on our socials on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Those will be linked down in the description below. Today, we're joined by John Andrews, UEFA Pro License coach whose football journey has taken him across Iceland, India, Ireland and the United States. John has worked at every level of the game, men's and women's football, youth academies and senior teams, professional and semi-professional environments. He's recruited, coached, mentored and analysed at the highest levels, earning titles, developing international talent and even being named Coach of the Year in Iceland. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, lads. Great to be on. And thanks for the kind words. I must say, it's you're making a very young man feel very old.
Absolute pleasure, mate. So, John, with all our guests, mate, we always like to rewind right back to the beginning. So, when did you first start kicking a football? When did you join your first team, etc.?
I first started kicking a football about a year and a half old, and my mother kind of pointed on to my father and said, look, there's something going on here, because I was able to half volley the ball back and forth off the wall at a year and a half. She said, look, this fella can play. The first team I ever joined was a team called Ringmahon Rangers, and you guys might be fairly knowledgeable on that, because it's the same team Queeveen Kelleher came from, the lad who's just signed for Brentford from Liverpool. And it's a smashing club down here in the south of Cork, and it has a massive reputation for developing players, and I was one of them. So it was a great. I joined them at 9, I think. I was playing for the under-12s, which was at the time not very legal, but it was just a way to, we were playing football morning, noon, and night, and then we, finally we got into a club kind of a environment. 11 aside every night. There was no small-sided games or anything like that. It was just 11 aside, and it was heaven.
Fantastic. So obviously, John, we first crossed paths at Coventry City. I know from my time there, the club always brought over a hotbed of talent from Ireland. I mean, I could list name after name of really talented Irish players I've had the pleasure of sharing a pitch with. So how did that move to Coventry City come about?
Again, playing for Ringmahon, I was about 13, and a guy called Maurice Fleming, who was the Irish scout for Coventry, I didn't know this until I was about 15. I came over at 16, but I didn't know until I was about 15. Had contacted the club and contacted my parents and just said, look, we're really interested in this kid. So all through my international career, through the 14s, 15s and 16s, I didn't have a clue. And all the other lads like Damien Duff and Mark Benson, Alan Mabry, all these guys were getting trials and contract offers. And I didn't have a notion. And I didn't know behind the scenes, Maurice was talking to my parents about getting me over to City. And I couldn't have picked a better club. I came over on trial, I think in 94, did the two trial times, loved it, and signed that summer.
Fantastic. So obviously, John, we spent, I think, 2 years together, right?
Yeah.
And even in that period, you would have gone like me through 3 managers at Coventry: Phil Neal,
Yeah.
Ron Atkinson,
Yeah.
Gordon Strachan.
Mm-hmm.
Did they have any influence on your coaching career as you then went on, which we'll speak about later? Was there anything about them that
Yeah,
impressed
there
on you?
was. Strachan, and I've only spoke to his son Gavin a couple of weeks ago. He's given me his number so I can give him a call. His energy, and you remember this, Carl. His energy was just infectious. Everything was done at 100%. Everything was done with a smile on his face. Now he could get fairly riled up, but you could see the love of the game, and I always took that into my sessions. And he said something once to me. It was actually when I was leaving the club in '98, I think, or '99. And he said, "Look, John," he said, "you'll make a living out of football." He said, "But just remember, it might be as a coach. And if you're not enjoying it, they're not enjoying it." And it stuck in my head. And then the other side of it was with Ron Atkinson, the way he made people feel. You know, I was a youth team player and a reserve team player like yourself, Carl. But I felt, whenever I went into the gaffer's office, I felt like £1,000,000. I felt like, I would make him his tea, if you remember, in the morning. That was one of my jobs. And, he'd rather than just kind of put the tea down, he'd say, "Where are you going, big fella?" And we'd sit down, talk about the game of football, look out the office window over writing. And it was, you wouldn't look back and you say these things happened and you kind of go, Jesus almighty, did it act, these massive, massive people in the game.
Yeah.
And there you were sitting down having tea with them, discussing the game of football. So I loved Ron, actually. He used to give me £20 to clean him and his wife's cars. So he was always a good one for me, Ron was.
Did you do a good job?
He kept on it. He never asked you to do it, Nosey. So I must have been all right. Yeah, but it was good. And I used to get to drive his Jag back from games and stuff like that as well, back to Wrighton, which was
You
really
didn't have a license though, did you?
I kind of did. You can edit that bit out, I suppose. No, I got my license in I got middle of '96, I think. Barry Quinn got his first, if you remember. And he was driving about. Him and Falky got their licenses first, and they were flying around the place in their cars. And then I got mine about 2 or 3 months later. So I don't think I drove it without a license. No, Jesus.
Fantastic. So, John, we work with, like yourself, youth players extensively. And one thing we always try and impress upon youth players is how significant that jump is between youth football and senior football.
Oh.
And obviously we did our apprenticeship at Coventry City to then go into a professional contract, training with seasoned pros and internationals on a day-to-day basis. It's a different ball game altogether, right? Can you just expand on that transition to youth to men's football, if you like?
There's no real correlation in it, Carl, because I made my debut for Mansfield actually against Lincoln, but I played a couple of games with the first team at Coventry, like training games and stuff. And what was that thing? It was the Midland Cup or something like that we all got a game in. And even that was like, you're in the dressing room and you don't mess about. Remember, we played a reserve game with Paul Williams played next to me. Remember Willow? And what a player he was. And he was coming back it was against Leicester. And I think we were winning 3-0 at Filbert Street. And I flicked the ball across. They scored, I think. And then Willow was, Jesus almighty, he was furious. And it was the old wet balls. I was convinced I had a concussion anyway. And Willow grabbed me and, slammed me into the wall. But it was I try and explain to the young players that I have when I'm working with them that when it's your living, at that stage, it could be the difference between a win bonus and a non-win bonus or a clean sheet bonus. Now, obviously, the money's gone crazy. But back then, it meant a lot to get a point or to get a clean sheet or to get a win where or get your appearance money. It's so important. And these lads have families. We were only young kids, Carl. These lads had families. They had so we couldn't mess about because it was our career, but it was also their livelihood. Like they had mortgages and families and everything. And when you put, some people can just leave that aside. I couldn't. I always had that responsibility in my head. I still do. That players have, responsibilities outside the game, and the game allows them to I don't know how to say it. The game allows them to have a certain lifestyle. You better not mess up with that. So that was the biggest, and then the pace of the game, as you know, the game is the exact same whether it's underage women to senior men in the Premier League. It's the exact same game. It's just the pace at which it's played. and you go from youth team to senior level. God, it's like going from horse manure to caviar. It's like bang.
Yeah.
So it was such a transition.
It's that psychological and physical step up, isn't it? It's a significant transition, and we're always trying to impress that upon the younger players we work with. The technical and tactical side of things is great and it's important, but that psychological robustness, that physical dynamism needs developing all the time. Yeah. So, John, you then went and played a little bit in the League of Ireland?
Well, I then went to Mansfield. I went to Mansfield for 2.5 years. And romantically, I went over there this weekend for the first time in 22 years. And they remembered me. And I couldn't believe it. It was very, very humbling. I was introduced to the dignitaries and did a little speech and stuff that I'd be posting online in a couple of days' time. But I played I don't know how many league games and cup games, but it was a fair few. And that was where really I played under a guy called Bill Dearden, but I also played with, you remember Dave Linnigan, brother of Andy Linnigan, used to play for Arsenal?
Yeah.
I played with Dave, and Dave people won't remember my relationship with him too much, as I was always counted as a senior player there. I was only 21 or 20, but I was always starting. I was treated like a senior player, but Dave really taught me the ropes as regards being a centre back and regards toughening up and playing in the lower leagues. And it was an invaluable experience. I'd be forever grateful for Dave for that. And then we went on to the League of Ireland.
So actually, before your spell within the League of Ireland, you did a bit of non-league with Grantham and Shepshed. What was that like?
Shepshed, one of my old clubs.
That's right. It was Scott Goodwin actually got me down there. I can't remember the manager's name, John Han or John Hine or something.
John Hannay, the famous John Hannay. Yeah, I played under John as well.
Good, God bless him. And they just needed players. So I was working. Do you remember the Northbrook Sports Club at all in Coventry and County?
Oh, yeah.
Remember there? I was working there for the McNulty brothers. And they just said, look, would you like to come and play a few games? So I never signed for them. I only played 3 or 4 games for them and loved it. You get a couple of quid, went down, and I was playing on the right wing, if you wouldn't believe it.
No, I don't believe that.
No, I was quick. Nosey, I was always quick, but I wasn't too skillful, but I was always quick. And then Grantham came in, Tony Kenworthy, who had a link to Mansfield. And Tony had scored the winning goal for the Freight Rover Trophy in '87 for Mansfield. And he just came in and said, look, I'd love you to come in and play for Grantham. I went down there for about 4 or 5 months. And then Mansfield came, because of Tony's connections, he would send me to Mansfield to play in the reserves to help Bill Dearden out just to fill up the team because they didn't have players. And within about 3 or 4 games, and every time, it's funny, I'm not going to say names now, but the guy who was running the reserve team at the time, every time I would go down there, he'd say, we don't want you. And I would say, fine, no problem. I don't really want to be here anyway. I'm happy at Grantham and I'm happy working in the Northbrook Sports Club, and I've got a nice girlfriend, I've got a nice this, life was good. And every time I'd go down, I'd get man of the match in the game on the paper, and he'd go, we don't want you. I said, I don't care. I said, I don't really want to be here either. But you start falling in love with football teams. And within about 3 or 4 weeks, you're kind of begging that they actually do want you. And about 3 or 4, maybe 5 weeks later, Bill Dearden called me in the office, slap, contract. And then that was how I got to Mansfield as well.
Fantastic. So, John, you eventually settled in Iceland. What drew you there? And obviously you spent 4 years there. So what kept you there long term?
In Iceland? Well, I've spent more than 4 years. God, I came to Iceland in 2008.
No, sorry, 4 years as a player. Is that right initially?
I played, yeah. What I did was, when I finished at Mansfield, I'd always promised my parents that if I came home to Ireland, I'd finish my education. And I'm not ashamed to admit this. I'm a nerd. I love reading. I love learning. I just love it. So I went back in and did, I don't know what the equivalent is in England. Is it the A levels?
Yeah.
That what you do after high school, is it?
Yeah.
I did my leaving cert, and I asked one of the coaches, I know we'll get onto this later, but I asked one of the coaches there, is there any chance of getting to America to continue my education? He said no. So I concentrated on playing. Eventually went to America for 4 years, and I was walking past my office as a coach. We had just won the national championships in 2007 with the women. And I was walking past my office and I heard the head coach, I was the assistant coach, and I heard the head coach go, John Andrews, no, he's mad, you don't want him. And I said, who's that? And he said, Gareth O'Sullivan. So I went on the phone, I said, hiya. And he said, would you like to come to Iceland? I said, yeah. And that was it. He just said, well, you can get back playing, you can get back coaching. And I watched that movie, you know, Rocky Balboa,
Yeah.
the number Rocky 6, I think it would have been.
Yeah.
And he talked about the stuff in the basement, that there was some stuff left in the basement. And I was with a friend of mine in America who's recently passed, and he said it to me. He says, Johnny, he says, you have stuff left as regards being a player. He said, would you ever think about going back? Luckily enough, 2 weeks later, I was walking past the office and this guy said, would you come to Iceland? So I just needed to get rid of the stuff in the basement. So I played 4 years then in Iceland.
So when you did start out your coaching journey, was it like a baptism in fire in terms of getting that insight of what it's like doing that role? Could you touch on that a little bit?
To be honest with you, Ash, it was. I started at a very high level in the college scene in the women's game. I'd done some bits. Noel, you remember this as well. We used to do these little bits around Coventry for Bert Edwards. Remember that? We would go around the schools and stuff and do all
mate.
those.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And I used to love, because I always wanted to be a coach. I loved playing, but it never turned me on as much as coaching and, you know, the interviews after the game and being able to talk about the game. Like what you guys are doing is incredible. Bringing the game to people. And I always wanted to be a coach. So I went straight in as the assistant coach to a team that had just lost the national championship semi-finals. So we had to then go and try and win it the next year. And it was, I think we got to the semi-finals the first year, won it then in 2007. So you're dealing with senior international women's players from Brazil, America, England, Ireland, Australia. There was some unbelievable Sweden. There was Sweden's internationals there. And it was a melting pot, because at the time all the best women's players went to college. All of them went through the college system. Now the worst men's players sometimes went through. It's kind of changing a little bit now, but back then all the best women's soccer players would go through the America system in college, get a degree, and then move on to the pros. So we were blessed, but you had to have your standards up, you know, because you couldn't mess about. They wouldn't allow you to drop your. I'll tell you a funny one. It's not funny, but it's good. We were playing a training game, and the head coach had to leave, so I take the session, and I said, "Oh, we'll have a bit of fun now. It's with the girls." And the players stopped the session, and they went, "John, what's going on?" I said, "Ah, it's you lot. We'll have a bit of fun. We didn't hire you. We didn't ask you to be hired for fun. We asked you to be hired because you see how you were as a player and that you're a winner. That's why we wanted you. Now stop all this fun rubbish." And I'm going, fantastic. Welcome home. I was delighted. So ever since then, it was an eye opener for me, and that's how I got into it.
Yeah, I mean, I recently came back from America a year ago, and the women's scene is massive. It's massive. It's grown a lot, and they're also starting academies like MLS clubs. Well, it's the NWSL. They're actually starting their own academies now, which is a good thing. Obviously, you then went back into playing and coaching at the same time in Iceland. How did that come about?
Again, Gareth had asked me to come over and be his assistant with the Premier League women's team after Elding. And when the men's coach heard I was coming over, all he did, this is just at the start of like Google and all this kind of stuff, and he went, Jesus, he's coming over. Will he play? And I kind of hid the fact that I was dying to get back playing. And signed on 2 years and loved it. But it was I was a much younger man now, lads, at that stage. And I pride myself on having a lot of energy, and my coaching style is all in. But I was running, let me guess that, I was running the Crete men's team, which was the 3rd division men's team. I was the assistant coach with the women. I was playing for the men's team. I was the academy head coach with the under-19s and the under-16s, and I was doing something else. So there was about 5 or 6 teams I was doing at the same time. But what it was just a case of, I did an interview on the TV around 2010, and they asked me about it, and they said, when do you sleep? I said, I don't need sleep. But I actually did. You run out of gas about 6 years later. But it was madness, because what it did was it gave me an appreciation of what I want to do now, which is coach and give everything to one team. Even when I went to India, I was head of strength and conditioning and the assistant manager, and there was little bits and pieces everywhere. Whereas the last 7-8 years in Iceland, I've just been a head coach, and it's worked out very, very well. But I don't think I would have had that grounding had I not taken all those jobs in 2008. I overloaded myself. I always believed that when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you should push yourself past your point to see how far you can go. To really see what you can put your body through, your mind through, and then you can kind of get into your 40s as an older man, as a middle-aged man, hopefully, and say, right, I've tested my body. I know what I can do. I tested my mind. I know where I need to rest. I know where I need to get some time for myself. I know where I maybe go and play golf and relax and take some time off. But you need to experiment with that in your 20s and your 30s, and I did. I totally overloaded myself and loved it, and I think I'm better now for it.
And I can certainly relate to that, John. I was only having a conversation with Ash last night, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Because Ash is in your early 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ash is doing a lot of the stuff that I spent probably the best part of 20 years doing.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how much you can actually fit in as a coach and as a manager, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think then it's about, as you gain more and more experience, you allocate your time and your energy a bit more wisely. But John, so what I'm interested in is, you got your coaching qualifications a bit further down the line.
Yeah.
So when you were first going into these roles, you spoke about your passion, your energy, your winning mentality. What other skills and abilities were you relying upon in your early coaching and managerial experience?
I didn't get my B license until I was 4 years or 5 years into being a head coach. And I'm not going to say I bluffed it, but the one thing about the licenses is that they'll structure, like you were talking about earlier, Nolsey, about, you do everything, but you can do an awful lot more if you structure your day. And if you structure in, I have an hour here, an hour there, 2 hours for this, and you get an awful lot more work done. And what I did in the early days of my coaching was I tried to fix everything in every session. Everything had to be high tempo, everything had to be high press, everything had to be full on 100%. And the players loved it because they saw they were still able to. I'm a big practice what you preach kind of a guy. So I was still playing at the time. So anything I would be trying to teach these male and female players that I was coaching, they could then come and watch me playing on the Saturday and go, oh Christ, yeah, he does the right things. Now I was never, you know this, Carl, I was never the best player. But I always tried to do the right things. I was very coachable, and I was able to pick things up very quickly. So I wanted that in my players as well. So I would give them stuff that Gordon Strachan had given us, or I'd learn from yourself, because you were a senior player in the youth team when I was there. Yourself, Colin Hawkins, Brett, and you'd give them all these little habits, and I relied a lot on that. And then you learn the tactical side of the game as you go on to it. This works. But most of it was just. I truly believe football is about 90% about how you feel, and 10% on the tactical side. 90% be fit, be in good shape, be organised. Don't be out late doing stupid things. Listen to your coaches. Be technically good. Now, any player can be technically good. Any player. So I had a guy called Bjarki Mar Sverrisson to answer your question. He's still my best friend today, and he's one of the best technical coaches I've ever seen. And Bjarki would come in to do the technical work. Passing, controlling, receiving from the air, long passing, outside of the foot passing, shooting, crossing, all the different, and that was his speciality, and still is today. And he came and did all that work, which allowed me then to focus on opposition analysis, and allowed me to focus on developing, as a manager, the psychological things, being able to talk to players in the right way, knowing which players need an arm around and which need a clip around the ear. And I developed that without licenses. The licenses didn't develop that. The license developed my structure and how to structure sessions, how to structure, let's say, periodization on year-long plans. And the early days of coaching was more or less, learning on the job. And I think I did a decent job of it.
Fantastic, John. So then you got this, and forgive me if I pronounce the team incorrectly, Haviti Riderin. You got your first head coach role.
No, well, that was a long. I'll tell you where that came from, Carl. That was a men's team that was reinvented. It was an old. The English translation is the White Knights. Riderin is Knights, and Kriti is White, and it was the White Knights. Funny enough, I used to call it the Krita Riderin, which is the white effers. I can't say the word on here, obviously. Reader is the word for sex. So I would call it Krita Riderin. And I didn't know I was making the mistake. So people used to crack up laughing. But that team had been out of existence for a few years, and they brought it back for me to tap on an extra couple of quid for my salary, to make sure the salary was competitive. So I got to work with some very good young players, players that went through to become underage internationals. And one of my crowning glories with that team was, I think it was 2010 that I left that, maybe 2011, maybe 2010. I did 2 years with them, and we graduated 14 of my players. They were supposed to be a joke team that were just set up for me to earn a few quid. I graduated 14 of those team to play with me the next year in 2011. They actually went and signed for the senior team in the men. So the whole men's team in After-Elding then the next year was full of the lads I had at Tweety.
Was there anything tangible you noticed about working with an individual international player versus a non-international player?
Yeah, that desire, that focus and desire. There is a level, and it's very. I'll take my own experience in the women's game. I was asked once about the type of player I look for in a women's player. I said I don't look for women's players. I look for footballers who happen to be women. And it's a big difference. There's a lot of women playing football, and that's fine, great. But there's footballers out there who happen to be female, and they're the special ones. And you look at any of the lionesses now. Those ladies are technically fantastic, but you see the Chloe Kellys, the Beth Meads, they are so driven. They are so focused on their craft. And, you look at how fit they are and how strong they are. That, their diet is absolutely perfect because, fantastically now for the women's game, it's their job. It's their job. And it's a great step. And then you look like even our own experiences playing at Coventry. We all thought we were good players, Nosey, but then McAllister comes in and Roland Nielsen comes in. And you only have to look at the body shape and the body fat of these guys, and you're like, God almighty. And we had people like Dion Dublin and Peter Unlove and John Salako and all them, and they were incredible. But then McAllister, Roland Nielsen comes in, Magnus Hedman, if you remember Magnus Hedman. Yeah. God, these guys were just like supermen. So there is a difference, but I do think it's a mentality thing. I think it's the difference is the mentality of these players. They just have that little extra. They'll go out and they don't have to be told to go out and do free kicks. They don't have to be told to eat the right things. They don't have to be told to do extra on the field or do extra in the gym. They just know it's the right thing to do. And now we have Instagram and Facebook, and they all have Ronaldo on their Instagrams and stuff. They only have to look at him. Yeah. They only have to look at him. And you look at Bon Mati with Spain, best player in the world in the female game as well. You look at her Instagram or her Facebook and stuff, it's all about football. And I think Steven Gerrard said it a few years ago, you have to be obsessed. And that's what I think the difference between the levels are. Some people they play football and they love it. Other people are obsessed by it. And I think the top international players, I think that's what they have.
Comes back again, doesn't it, to the psychological and physical attributes that are so important if you want to reach that next level. So, John, you have had all these rich experience, done very, very well in the coaching and managerial side. You come back to Ireland, now you start doing your awards, if you like. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that experience, actually, then going on these courses.
It was very strange because I did my UEFA B mostly in Iceland, and then I stopped with the club that I was at, came back to Ireland, and actually did the final exam down here in Fort Island in Cork on the golf club while the A license was going on. And as I told you earlier, I'm a nerd, Carl, so I love learning, whether it be about football, psychology, it doesn't matter. I just love learning. And I got invited onto the A license I can't remember what year it was. I think it was 2014, 15. And we had a grade 8 A license. Paddy McCarthy, that's now the assistant manager at Crystal Palace, was on it. Peter Ramage, who's my nephew's, loan officer at Newcastle United, Rambo was on it. Jim Brennan, Andy Reid, all these guys were on the licenses, and it was incredible. And then what it did was I don't really know if you're a good coach or not by the winning and losing of your team. Obviously, people, history is judged by the winners, which is great. But there's also, am I doing the right things? You can't control, let's say, a referee's decision in the last minute to lose your game with a penalty. So you can't control that, but you can control how much work you put in and the sessions you put on, and are the players, ready for the game, etc., etc. And I always thought I was good at that. and I got into the A license, which is a brilliant license. I have to say, I really enjoyed the pro license, but the A license was a real learning experience for me, because it gave me structure on how to formulate sessions properly, timing, where to put certain things in a session, how to get the most out of it, how to recover, periodization. Oh, it was a brilliant insight. And then it went to another level onto the pro license. But and the FAI, I have to say this, the FAI apparently, we go to Geneva for the UEFA conference every year. The pro license coaches go there, and they can't wait for the Irish to do the presentation, because it's so innovative. It's the Irish coach education system is one of the best in the world, and I was lucky enough to run my 2 licenses through it.
Fantastic.
So, when you completed your A license, did you feel a shift in terms of how you felt as a coach? Was there like a validation towards achieving that award?
You know what? Yeah, I've never looked at it like that. That's a brilliant question. Yeah, Ash, I did. And one of the things I felt was, I felt like I was doing an awful lot right in Iceland when I was doing my sessions and stuff like that. I felt like I was doing a lot right, and then it was tightening the bolts and the nuts and bolts around it, and going, oh wow, and actually learning the process that I never learned that through the B license, or never learned that through coaching, because I was flying off the seat of my pants. But then to go into the FAI and to look and go, oh wow, this is why the right thing is the right thing. That's what I learned on the A license. And there was a certain validation of the 10 years previous, or the 8, 9, 10 years previous, that it was worthwhile, that it wasn't just you weren't bluffing it. You were really putting your heart and soul into it. And I think you always get to the right way anyway, if you know what I mean. You're always going to get to the right way to do things. But licenses they kind of guide you in that direction. And I thought, for me, and again, Niall O'Regan with the Football Association of Ireland, they're so creative, and they're so I'll say innovative again, just to mention that word. But there's so much fluidity in the Irish coach education system, that they come in and they say, look, you guys were good players. We're not teaching you about the game. We're teaching you how to put the game across. And it was, what a great education it was. So yeah, there was a bit of validation there, Ash, because I always felt like I was doing things right, but they were showing me how and why I was doing it right, and how I could do it better, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So John, then your career takes a real fascinating turn. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name of the team in India.
Yeah.
Massive professional and cultural shift there. How did that opportunity come about? And if you can tell us the name of the team, because I'm not going to pronounce it.
It's DSK Shivajians. It's like a warrior team, and they were associated with Liverpool, the International Academy in Liverpool. And funny enough, your under-18s PDP coach, Dave Rogers, was the head coach, and I did my licenses with Dave at Coventry City. He's at Coventry now, the under-18s PDP coach. And I did my A license with Dave. We got on very, very well. And he said 2015, he said, would you like to come to India and be my head of strength and conditioning and a coach for the International Academy? I said, of course I would. And that's how that came about. I think Dave was over there 2 years or 3 years before I was. And we went over, and it was surreal. It's just a different world. And so I was the head of strength and conditioning for the Liverpool International Academy and the SK Shivajians. I was a coach for the International Academy, and I ended up being the assistant coach as well for the DSK Shivajians senior men's team. And that was a weird experience, because India's a smashing country, so bloody hot though, So we had European players coming over, centre backs and stuff like that. An Irish guy, a Serbian guy, and they're big, muscly lads. But after 10 or 15 minutes, they'd cramp up. So being the head of strength and conditioning and nutrition, I had to then look after those players. And Dave, I don't know if you know Dave, but he wanted things done yesterday. He was very, not impatient. He's just a very passionate guy, and he did a great job over there in India. And it was my job to get these players from 10 minutes cramping up and can't play to 90 minutes when the season started. And we did okay. And for I think it was only the second year they were in the league in India, and I think we finished 6th or 7th, which was great. we did fantastic, and the club went bankrupt, and we had to come home. But I'm absolutely convinced had the club not have gone bankrupt, we would have both seen out our contracts there, because it was a fantastic experience.
You worked with a lot of players that went on to play internationally for India. I spoke to a coach that actually worked there a couple of years ago, and he had a lot of positive things to say about the Indian players and their character and their personality and their professionalism. Would you attest to that?
Yeah, there were lads that had nothing. They had absolutely nothing. So whatever we could give them, they were so grateful. They were so grateful. And then their individual ability was absolutely incredible, because again, they had nothing except the football to play around with every day. So they were able to, technically they were absolutely fantastic. The technical ability of these players was incredible. What I loved was their humility and their willingness to learn. And there was some players obviously they had a bit more money, so they were a bit more, chin up. But these young players we had, like Zola and Jerry and a couple of Jerrys, they were just all they wanted to do was learn. All they wanted to do was be the best. And they're still shining in the Indian League now, in the I-League. I keep in contact with some of them, and, they all have families now and stuff like that. But you wouldn't believe it how dedicated they were. 40-degree heat, 35-degree, 45-degree heat. They'd want to do extra sessions. They'd be in the gym all the time. They just did whatever recovery I asked them to do, they would do it. They were just so focused. And a lot of that obviously came from the management staff, myself and Dave and a couple more, that we demanded those standards, but they lapped it up because nobody else was doing it at the time in India. And you remember, there was so many great players went over. Teddy Sheringham went over there. Robbie Keane went over there. Good Johnson went over there. There was so many smashing players went over there, and loved it.
Brilliant. So then, John, you go back to Iceland. I'm presuming at this point now you've got more qualifications. You've got vast experiences. Yeah. Are you a different coach now?
Yeah.
Going back to Ireland, in what way?
More mature. I didn't lose my rag when I was in Iceland first. I had a bit of a reputation of shouting and roaring on the sidelines and trying to be the 12th man and all that kind of stuff. And it was funny enough. I got talking to Michel Salgado. He was on the A license with us, the Real Madrid centre back, and I got talking to him about great managers. And he mentioned Ancelotti and how cool he was and calm he was. And one of the things he said, and he was a great fella, Salgado he was fantastic, but he mentioned that if the manager on the sideline is seemingly stressed and screaming all over, the players will be stressed. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I just kind of calmed down a little bit. And my yellow cards went down to almost nothing as a manager. I don't think I had one. I think I had one red card a couple of years ago, I think. But yellow cards and shouting and roaring and screaming and all that kind of stuff, because I wanted to be a positive influence on the players that I was coaching. I didn't want them to think that their coach was losing the rag or their coach was in any way out of control, because I wanted them to stay in control. I wanted them to be focused, and I couldn't ask them to do one thing and me to do another. So I went to a small town called Husavik, and if you've ever seen the movie, the Eurovision with Will Ferrell, have you seen it?
I haven't, no.
That movie was shot in Husavik when we were there, and it was a tiny little town, maybe 1,500 people maximum, and we ended up winning like the second division there with them, which had never been done before on the women's. But it was just this, after India, which was so mega and so mad. And you can't explain India to people who haven't been there. It's just mad. It's a great place, but it's absolute madness. I just needed a little bit of a chill.
I've seen videos and it's so chaotic. Like,
oh my God.
There.
Well, we had in India, we had a hotel. Our owner had a hotel about 400, 800 meters. About 400 meters away from the ground, and the away team would stay there. Beautiful hotel. And then they would walk across to the games, fresh as a daisy and whatever. We lived about 4 miles away, and it took us about an hour and a half in the traffic. And we were always in suits. Dave always had us dressed fantastically well, and we always looked great. And we were dressed in suits, and it would take us an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to get to the game. It was just traffic. And we would say, why can't we stay in the hotel, the night before the game? It was madness. But it was just so chaotic that I then went to Husavik with 1,200, 1,500 people, and it was just like somebody left the pressure valve off, it was like, and it was fantastic. I was able to enjoy my coaching. I was able to develop players, and again, I did a couple of jobs in Husavik. I was helping out with the men's team. I was head coach of the women's team, and there was also, because it's such a small town, there wasn't that many kids there, so we mixed the under 15 boys and girls. And I was coaching a lot of the young girls. There was another guy coaching the boys, so we mixed them, and we would go all over the country and play boys' teams. Now, they'd always get beaten, because physically the boys, the ego of the boys that they were playing against would overpower the girls. But I tell you this, every single referee in that team, they all came to us at the end of the game and went, "My God, John, those girls can play." No, the lads were good. The lads were okay too. But he said, "Those girls can play." And I think there was 11 of those girls in that team against the boys. 7 of them went on the next year to play in my first team and won the league. So it was fantastic. It's just a case of, it doesn't matter in youth football about winning and losing and stuff like that. It matters about developing the players. And my senior team then in 2000, I'm going to get the year wrong. Was it 19? I think my senior team in 2019 won the league, never lost a game. And as I said, 7 of those players were in that starting lineup.
So around that time, you got on to do your pro license. Obviously, that's the highest thing you can ever achieve in football. Highest qualification. We talked about validation. What did this feel like when you completed it, and what was the experience like as well?
The experience was incredible, because you're on a license with Damien Duff and Robbie Keane, Andy Reid, all these guys dropping names, and of course Paddy was on there, Paddy McCarthy was on there, Keith Andrews, the current Brentford manager, was on it. There was loads of great people on that license. But I'll tell you this now, Ash, it was terrifying, because they kept talking to me about the coach's curse, the pro license coach's curse. That, a year and a half after you get your pro license, you're for the off, you get the elbow, you get fired. And it was always in the back of my mind going, Christ, I haven't lost my job yet. And I was 7 years with the pro license before I stopped in June. But one of the nicest stories about it was, we went the very first night we got there, we all sat around and, had a cup of tea or whatever it was. And Robbie Keane came in. And Robbie's meticulous. You can see how well he's doing with his team now. They're 2 games away from the Champions League qualifying. He's doing a great job. And he came in, and we were just sitting in the lobby and having a cup of tea or whatever. And he goes, "Big man, you're kind of quiet." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm a little intimidated." And he had said, "What are you intimidated for?" He said, "You're the one who's a head coach. You're the one who's done this and done." And he rattled off everything that I had done. Guy had done his homework, and it's so, it was so. It's just him. And that was the level. You kind of look at these people and go, wow, that's the level. Like, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to know who John Andrews was or anything, but he did. And he did his homework, and it was quite intimidating, to be honest with you. But then as the license goes on, much like the A license, you start realizing that you're doing an awful lot of good things. You're doing an awful lot of good things. And it's just, it guides you and says, hey, here's a little bit of structure. Here's how the best in the world do it. And you can judge how far away from them you are, or how close you are to them. And it was a brilliant experience, and such a good learning experience. You got to have a growth mindset. You got to be open to learning in these things. Because a lot of people, when they go into stuff like that, you can see that they're going, well, I know this. But you look at one of the greatest coaches in the history of England, David Moyes. He did his pro license twice. Yeah, he wasn't happy with the first one, and he went back and did it again. So it was an amazing experience, and I got lucky. I got Iceland. It was a 2-year study on the Icelandic national team qualifying. I'm going to say for the 2016 European Championships or the 2018 European Championships, and I was lucky that I had just signed for Vikingur. So the captain of the joined captain, Kári Arnason, was the centre back for Iceland and had just joined Vikingur the year before. So I was able to show him all my stuff. I never asked him for help. I thought that would have been cheating, but I was able to show him all my findings. I said, "Look, is this accurate?" And he was going, "John, you got this spot on about how they play, how they do." So I spent an awful lot of time with the men's national team studying them, behind the scenes and stuff like that. And, these kind of experiences they're invaluable, they're invaluable. And I can only say thank you to Cowrie and all these people that helped me out on that, because they didn't have to, but there's good people everywhere.
No, absolutely, mate. So at Vikingur, John, am I right in saying this? You won the Icelandic Cup and you won the league.
Yeah.
What's your secret there? How did you achieve that?
Once read a book by John Wooden. He was a UCLA basketball coach, and
I've
he
read
said,
it.
remember it? And he said
yeah.
the best way to have a 95 game unbeaten run is not to think about it. So we it was a gradual process, Nosey, because I went in there in the November, I think, of 2019, and they had split. It was HK Vikingur. It was two teams joined together for 30 years, and they split. So HK went down to the second division, Vikingur went to the first division, and then that was where it was. And I was the first head coach of that team, and it was a case of just building it from nothing. Like, there was nothing there. There was no structure, no infrastructure. There was no coaches, and I did my pro license. I watched it on the plane over to East Midlands a few days ago. The staff roles and responsibilities, and you have your name in the middle, and you've got the bubbles all sticking out of it. Physiotherapist. I had mine, and everything was blank. I had no staff because I'd just taken the job. There was nobody in there, so I was able to pick my own staff. I was able to I signed any player that could chew gum and that could stand upright at the same time. I just signed. I said, right, I'll sign everybody, and then slowly but surely you start, letting people go, and then you were left with a half decent team. And the first year was the year of COVID. It was a nightmare. And the second year we had a little bit more of a vision, and then the third year I thought we should have got promoted that year up to the Premier League. I thought we were terrific. And then the fourth year, which was 2023, in the meeting in 2019, and I was reminded about this a few weeks ago when I left the job. I told them, I said, by 2024, I'll have won you a major tournament, and we'll be in the Premier League. And they were laughing. They all laughed, and they didn't laugh in 2023. So the secret was just hard work and good players, Nosey. There's no, you know this, Nash, you know this. There's no secret. You have to have good players and you have to work hard. There's no, you can, a bit of luck here and there, but Payne Stewart said it, the golfer, wasn't it? Strachan used to always say it, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So there was no tactical, amazing. Obviously, we had a certain way of playing, and I like playing a certain way to suit my personality, which is high press and, with energy. And I feel this in the men's game as well. I don't think there's too many players out there, and obviously the Messis of this world are different, but there's not too many players out there that if you really put them under pressure, that they can perform at the top. But everyone's dropping off now, and and people aren't being put under pressure in the middle third of the field. And it's okay. Well, anyone can play that kind of football. And I thought, well, I'm not going to let anybody play at all. So we have to be fit, and we have to be organised, and have to have a plan A, B, and C. And it worked. It worked quite well.
Brilliant.
So you built this club from the ground up in terms of the ladies' football at Vikingur. How hard was it to leave all of that behind? Obviously, when you finished,
it was very hard. It took me about 2 weeks. 2 weeks of being at home and being in that lovely environment of being back in Cork and having my friends, especially my family as well. And my friends, there's a girl called Sharon Mahali who's been a friend of mine for 35 years. And we sat outside a coffee house about 10 days in. And I was on a walk, and it's beautiful here. So I was on a walk, and she said, John, when do we come over and call it? It was in between a song, in between a song on the headphones. So had I not had that break in the song, I wouldn't have heard her, and I would have just kept on walking. And we went over, and she goes, you okay? I said, not too good. I missed the place, and, I didn't think it was the right time to go. And she gave me a big hug, and it was just done. And from that minute on, it was just, okay, time to move on to the next thing. And it's amazing what your friends can do for you and your family can do for you. So it was very hard to leave it. Very hard to read the messages as well from the players, because I was told in the Tuesday morning, and I had a flight booked to Ireland on the Wednesday morning. So by the time the players found out that I wasn't going to be there, I was already almost home. And then you're traveling down on the train to Cork from Dublin, and you've got all like 50 or 60 messages from people telling you they miss you and they love you. That was tough. But then after a week, 10 days, you just go, look, this is life, get over it. And I'm not trying to be hard or tough or anything. It was really hard. It really was. But it's kind of like, okay, get over it. Get over it. It's time to move on now. And I started looking at clubs in Iceland. I started speaking to people who represent me and, agencies and stuff like that, and people that I know through the game, and just said, yeah, it's about time I get back in now. And that was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm going back to Iceland now on Sunday. And hopefully something pops up. But it was very hard to leave that when you've built it. It was the same at After Elling when I was in Iceland the first time. The team was almost relegated in 2010. They were given no chance to stay up, and I took the job with 6 games to go. And I think we tied 2 and won 1, which kept us up, and nobody saw that coming. And then every year for the next 4 years, I kept them in the Premier. I helped keep them in the Premier League, and that was like winning the league for us. I left in 2014, and they got relegated in 15 and 16. And I was like, okay, it's like you were talking earlier about the A license, Ash. It was just a kind of validation that what I was doing was okay and was good enough. And I actually own a house. I own an apartment in that area now in Musselspire, and it's lovely walking around the place because people still remember those days. And I hope that when I go back to Viking or with another club or just to watch a game, I hope they remember. They have their memories, and I hope they appreciate the work that we put in and the little bit of success we gave them, because it was so much fun doing it, if you know what I mean.
Fantastic. So, John, during that stint, you were named Coach of the Year in Iceland, right? I mean, that must have been a great feeling. Why do you think you were named Coach of the Year?
Maybe because we'd done something that I don't think has been done before, which was win the equivalent of the FA Cup from the second division, like the league under. So it would be like win someone from the Championship winning the FA Cup. I don't think that's been done before, has it? Maybe it has. I'm not sure. But I don't look at the past that much, but it was. I don't think it's ever been done in Iceland, and we also had won the first division to get up to the Premier League that year, spending very little money. I don't think we had any foreign players. It was all Icelandic players, most of them homegrown. So it was something special, and it was. Maybe that's why it is. But that would be for someone else to answer. I can't ask. I can only say that I was delighted to do what we did, and I don't want to sound. I don't want to sound looking back over things, but I just hope that those people in that club just remember and I wish them all the success for the future, of course, because I still love I still love the players and we still get on. And I just hope that I always said that I would leave before I'd know when to leave before I was forced out, and I still believe that it was a little premature, but it was okay. It was all right. And the Coach of the Year thing, I think sometimes it comes down to if you win something, and the more you win, the more you get that. But then there's coaches like Oscar Smauri in Fram, who has taken the team from the second division to the first division. They're struggling in the Premier League at the moment, but these guys are still there. And who's to say that I'm a better coach than that guy just because I have a couple of gold medals? And, that guy has developed the team very, very well. There's other coaches. The guy who took over from me in Volsinger is doing both the men's and the women's job now, and he's trying to get the women promoted from the second division to the first division, and he's holding the men in the first division in a town of 1,200 people. That's an incredible job. So It's for other people to talk about Coach of the Years and stuff like that. I wouldn't really be able to talk about that. But I was grateful to get it.
Good work.
So, John, you mentioned going back to Iceland. What's next for you? Is it back in Iceland or is it anywhere in the world? What do you think? Obviously, you can't predict the future, but what do you think?
Well, the best way to predict the future is to create it. I don't know who said that, but it's a good line. The best way to predict the future is to create it. There's nothing on the cards at the moment, but it's in Iceland because it's a summer league. This will be around about the time now people will start moving on. August, September, they'll start moving on and jobs will start changing. So that kind of stuff will start opening up now. I'm in love with the game of football, Ash. It doesn't. I think my CV proves it. There's two things my CV proves. Number one is I stay the course. I've been at places a long time. I don't jump from club to club to club. I'm quite reliable. And number two is that I love the game, and I'm willing to travel. India, America, Iceland, England, Ireland. I'm willing to travel. I don't care where it is, as long as I'm involved in the game of football at a good level. People will get my best. I'd like a club that's motivating, that would be able to keep my juices flowing. I think you can kind of hear from me that I'm quite an energetic person. So I'd like a club that would match that. But it doesn't matter to me, as long as I'm coaching, as long as I'm involved in the game of football, as long as I can enjoy life and have a smile on my face. Whether it's in Iceland, but I love Iceland, and the people, they fit me. The golf courses are nice this time of year, so I couldn't really care less where it is. But it's as long as I'm in the game of football, it's an honor. You guys are in it doing your podcasts and stuff. It's an honor to be in the game of football and call that your profession. So no matter where, I hope it's at a very good club. Let's keep fingers crossed.
Brilliant. So, John, just to wrap up now, what is, for our listeners, what is one piece of advice you would give to any aspiring coach from your journey so far in the game?
Realize that you don't know everything. Realize that you don't know everything, and realize that when you think you know everything, that's when the learning process starts. When you think you're at the top, that's when you have your most learning experiences. And the other thing is, and this is a very old cliche, but it's hard work. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So when you're having lonely nights, and when you're having, time away from your family, and when you're having to, people talk about sacrifices all the time. They say, "Oh, I sacrificed this for football." You don't sacrifice this for football. It's a choice. You choose it. And if you choose to do something else, if you choose to go out on a Saturday night, especially as a young coach, because, a coach called me, sorry enough for going off on a tangent, but a coach called me on Monday morning last week, and he was talking about, he went to a young tournament in, was it Spain he was in? And he said they coached on a Saturday and they were coaching again Sunday morning, and they went out partying. This guy now is, I wouldn't say he's too young, late 40s, close to 50. And they were out partying till 5, 6 in the morning. And then they were up at 8 for breakfast to go coaching kids at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And he was telling how delighted he was with it. I said, you do realize, number one, you're nearly 50. And number two, you've got a responsibility to these kids. You can't be turning up hungover. And that's your choice. That's not you're not sacrificing a night out in Spain or a night out in Madrid or wherever they were. You're not. You're choosing to be a professional. There's a big difference. So that would be the two things. It's all to do with hard work, obviously, but it's a choice. This lifestyle is a choice, and it's a great life, but it comes with choices to be made. You can't do the things that other people do, like going out on a Saturday night till 5 in the morning and bluffing your job on a Sunday. You just can't do it. So I think my dad used to tell me, if you're going to do something, take the time to do it your best at the first time, because you might not have time to do it the second time. So that would be it. And the learning experiences, obviously, I got from John Wooden, which was, it's when you think you know everything, that's when learning starts.
Great piece of advice.
That would be about it.
It's a real pleasure, John, to speak to you today. I think personally as well, like, this last couple of years has been a lot of hard work for me, but I've never for 1 minute not enjoyed it. And I think I've been working with Carl for many, many years as well. It's a great learning experience to learn off yourself, learn off of a lot of people with experience. That brings us to the end of the episode. I wish we could talk a little bit more, but I really enjoyed it. So thank you, John. And I want to thank the viewers for listening, and to Comfort Temperature Solutions for sponsoring the episode. Thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, lads. See you soon. All the best for the podcast.
Take care.
Bye-bye.